Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a cubic deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this one because this is one of the craziest OTK decks in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I love playing around with this deck and being able to summon Crimson Nova, the Dark Cubic Lord. It is an absolutely crazy monster that basically can attack multiple times and be able to do 3k burn damage to your opponent during each end phase, and it's just an amazing boss monster to play in a deck like this. So I'm really excited to show you guys this deck, so without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can come bar notifications, go ahead and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name searched in a single video, getting a signed card in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron, along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Crimson Nova. So you got to play 3 copies of Crimson Nova. Crimson Nova is extremely important for this deck and has the ability, it cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special from your hand by revealing 3 other cubic cards in your hand with different names, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. And it's unaffected by other monsters' activated effects whose original attack is 3,000 or less, which is pretty amazing to be able to just stop them from being able to use the effects of monsters on this card. And then it has also the ability that when this card destroys a monster by battle, and you can activate the effect to make this card attack a second time during that battle phase. And then during the end phase, each player takes 3,000 damage from this card, which is really amazing just to give your opponent and you 3k burn damage, because you can OTK your opponent with like 3 attacks, and basically it's like a third direct attack against your opponent to do like 9,000 damage against your opponent, which is really amazing. We're then going to be playing 3 copies of Yugioh. Yugioh is single-handedly the next most important card in the entire deck outside of Crimson Nova, because basically it's a walking Foolish Burial, because what this does is if this card is normal or special summoned, you get to send 1 cubic card from your deck to the graveyard, which is really amazing for this deck for cards like the Cubic Karma and stuff like that, to be able to then banish them and go off into some really amazing plays. Even Unification of the Cubic Lords is really amazing to send to the graveyard off your copy of Yugioh. We then play 3 copies of Yugioh. Yugioh is kind of a defensive card. It can't be destroyed by battle, and at the start of the damage step, if this card battle an opponent's monster, you can place the card face up in your spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell, and if you do, you place a cubic counter on your opponent's monster. And monsters with cubic counters can't attack or activate their effects, and if this card is treated as a continuous spell by a card effect, during your main phase, you can special on this card from your spell and trap card zone, so it can actually bounce itself back to the monster zone to continuously be a little bit of a disruption, which is really, really nice. I love this card in this deck. It's really nice to just be able to set this card on your field and just know you're going to be protected because it can't be destroyed by battle. We then play a single copy of Buster Gunneal. Buster Gunneal is an amazing card in this deck. So Buster Gunneal has the effect that it cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned from your hand by sending 3 cubic monsters you control to the graveyard, and you cannot special summon this card by other ways. And if this card is summoned this way, it gains 3,000 attack, because that 0/0 does look a little bit bad, but when you do actually summon it correctly, it does go up to 3k. And also, it has the ability this card can make up to 3 attacks per turn, and then during each battle phase, it can make 3 attacks. And if this card in your possession is sent to the graveyard by your opponent's card, either by battle or by card effect, you can target 3 cubic monsters in your graveyard and special summon them, and then add a cubic card from your deck or graveyard to your hand, which is really nice to just be able to get you a little bit of recursion out of a card like this. We then play a single copy of Endora Doom. Endora Doom kind of does the exact same thing as Buster Gunneal, except when it's summoned, it can goes up to 2,400, and if this card is special summoned, then you inflict 800 points of damage. It doesn't do that second effect that it can attack 2 to 3 times. It just has the ability to inflict 800, which arguably makes it a little bit worse, but that 800 burn damage is pretty good. It also has the ability that if this card is destroyed by battle or by card effect, by opponent's card effect, then you target the 3 cubic monsters in your graveyard and special summon them, and then add a cubic card from your deck or graveyard to your hand as well. I then play a single copy of Blade Garuda. Blade Garuda has the ability that cannot be special summoned except by the effect of sending 2 cubic monsters you control to the graveyard. And if it's summoned this way, it gains 2,000 attack, and this card can make a second attack during each battle phase. And when this card destroys a monster by battle, you can target up to 3 Yugiohs in your graveyard and special summon those, or send this card to the graveyard if you do special summon them, and then you get to add a Buster Gunneal from your deck to your hand to be able to basically make it super easy to be able to summon Buster Gunneal. And then I play a single copy of the Cubic King. Cubic King is pretty good because when it's summoned, it goes to 800 attack and also inflicts 800 damage to your opponent, which is kind of nice just to do that extra 800 burn damage, which is really nice. You just have to send 1 cubic card from your field to the graveyard, which is pretty cool to just be able to send a monster that you control, like a Yugioh, to your side of the field to be able to instantly special summon this, which is really easy. Like, you can just normal summon out of Yugioh and then send the Yugioh to the graveyard, special summon this, inflict 800 points of damage to your opponent. And it also has the ability that if this card card battled, you can target up to 2 V-Joms in your graveyard, send this card to the grave, maybe you special summon them, and then you get to add a Volca, the Cubic King, but you don't play Volca in this deck, you just play Blade Garuda, and you play the this Cubic King and Endora Doom, which kind of like is the two different lines. You're basically playing this from the Endora Doom line, and then you're playing Blade Garuda from the Buster Gunnia line, and the reason you do that is for the names, but they're really good in the deck just like this. We then play 3 copies of Summoner Monk because it helps you turbo out your copy of your Duza to your side of the field. I still really like Summoner Monk, and it's really good in this deck. Now, I do side in sometimes some Denko Sekkas into the deck in place of the Summoner Monk if I'm trying to slow the game down, if I'm playing against like Eldritch. Denko Sekka can take this card's place if you want to. I just really like to be able to turbo out my Duza with the copy of Summoner Monk. I then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom as well. The Ash Blossoms you can discard to the graveyard to stop your opponent from touching the deck, which is really nice just to be able to deal with your opponent's shenanigans. And then we play a 2 copies of the Gendarla, the Mystery Dust Kaiju. These are basically here to play through the Barrier Statue. You can tribute, if you're playing against Tri-Brigade, you can tribute the Barrier Statue of Stormwinds on their side of the field to be able to summon this, and then punch through it with a copy of Crimson Nova, which is really, really nice. And it basically becomes a 1-card OTK, or 3-card OTK, where you use Cubic Wave, this, and Crimson Nova to be able to just immediately special summon Crimson Nova, tribute their copy of their monster, punch into this, and it does 3,300 if you boost up the attack of Crimson Nova, and then you swing again for 6,000 more, because you double the attack of Crimson Nova with Wave, and then you basically OTK your opponent. So that's the reason I'm playing 2 copies of Gendarla, is just to deal with basically any card that my opponent throws at me. I can just tribute it off like a Dragoons, or if I'm playing the copies, if they're playing Stormwinds. If you don't have the Gandarlas, you can play any other Kaiju in this position. You're just not going to be able to tribute through one of the Stormwind, the barrier statues. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, I'm playing a single copy of Cubic Dharma. Cubic Dharma is pretty good because it has the ability to take no damage from attacks involving your Cubic monsters, and you only affect this card once per turn. You can send a Cubic card from your hand to the graveyard if you do draw a card, or you can banish it from the graveyard to target a Cubic monster in the grave and add it back to your hand. The draw effect comes in really, really handy, I will mention. We then play 3 copies of Cubic Wave. Cubic Wave is so important in this deck because it lets you target a Cubic monster and a monster your opponent controls, and you half the attack of your opponent's monster and you double the attack of yours, which is really great for OTKing if you use Crimson Nova, because it'll boost the Crimson Nova up to 6,000, which is really, really amazing, and it can attack twice, and it does 3k burn damage at the end phase. And also it has the ability that you can banish this card from the graveyard to target face-up monster your opponent controls, equal to the number of banished Cubic monsters, and place 1 Cubic counter on each of them, which is really, really good, and you can banish any number of Cubic monsters from your graveyard to activate this effect, which is really amazing just to get you a bunch of Cubic counters on the field, because then those monsters with Cubic counters can attack and it negates their effects. I wish it was a quick effect though, because then this card would be insane. We then play 3 copies of Cubic Karma. Cubic Karma has the ability that the only important effect of Cubic Karma is you can banish this card from your graveyard to add a Cubic monster from your deck to your hand. That's going to be the main effect that you're going to be using on this card all the time. Like, the rest of the effects on this card don't super matter. Like, it's basically a wall of text to say, hey, banish this in the graveyard, and then you get to add 1 from your deck to your hand. Like, that's the big effect of this, because this is what you're sending to the graveyard all the time with your copy of Duza. We then play 2 copies of Twin Twister. Twin Twister is basically just here to handle back row, because this deck does have a little bit of problem dealing with back row, and so this basically helps out with that a lot to be able to pop stuff. Plus, if you open up a copy of Karma, you can just discard the Karma or discard the Wave. If you open up multiple of those to get them in the graveyard to resolve effect. Same thing with kind of Unification, just to get it in the graveyard. It's really nice to be able to pop off with those effects and be able to pop back row. We then play 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. The Pot of Extravagance is basically here just to give you more draws, because you really don't care about the extra deck all that much. It's there just as utility, but you don't have to play into it all that much. So basically this is here to be able to help you dig into the deck. We then play 3 copies of Foolish Burial Goods, because the Foolish Burial Goods get your spells and traps to the graveyard faster, like your copies of Karma and your copies of Wave to the graveyard and Unification. So this card is really good as a 3 of in the deck to be able to just send those to the graveyard to be able to get more combos. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just playing a single copy of Ascension, and we're going to be playing 3 copies of Unification. Basically what Ascension does is when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can special summon a V-Jom from the deck, and if you do, change the attack target to it, and after damage calculation, if your opponent's life points are at least 2,000 higher than yours, you can manage to discard from the graveyard to be able to special summon 1 V-Jom from your hand, deck, or grave, and then if only your opponent controls a monster when this effect was activated, you can special summon 2 more V-Joms as well, which helps you get out Buster Gunneal and is just really good. To be a little bit more of a defensive card is really nice, and then the Unifications are just really, really good. They have a fusion effect that you basically can activate when they're on the field, but the graveyard effect is where it's at, because what it does is you can banish this card from the graveyard, especially summon 1 level 4 or lower cubic monster from your hand or graveyard, ignoring its summoning conditions. When a cubic monster is destroyed by battle or leaves the field for any reason, you can banish it to get that effect off, to be able to basically special summon your Duza to your side of the field to be able to get its effect to go off again, to send Karma and then banish Karma for a search. So basically it's a long-winded way of getting you a search. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're playing a single copy of Crimson Nova for just the off chance if we do get the Unification and 3 copies of Crimson Nova in our hand. You can go into the Trinity, which is very, very rare, I will admit. Like, I think I've summoned this like 3 times since I've been playing this deck. Like, it is really, really rare, and you can drop this if you want to. I haven't, because I just like to have it in the extra deck. Plus, it's an extravagance build, so I really don't care about the extra deck all that much. And if you see any of these cards you want to bump up, you can drop some of them that you don't feel like are necessary. I then play a single copy of Exciton Knight. The Exciton Knight comes in super handy in this deck, because the Exciton Knight is going to get you a lot of pops on the field, which this deck does really well at getting you a bunch of pops. I play a single copy of number 60. Number 60 can let you draw 2 and discard 1, special summon a monster back from the graveyard, or double the attack of a monster until the end of the turn, which comes in kind of handy as well for the deck. We'll copy of Baguska because it can basically slow the game down. If you summon Summoner Monk, you can basically summon any of these, which is what's really nice about this deck. We play a single copy of number 27 because it's basically my Zeus machine. This basically helps me out at the end of the battle phase. If this card destroyed a monster by battle, then you can special summon from your extra deck 1 rank 10 or higher machine XZ monster, which is always going to be my copy of the Super Quantum Mech King Great Magius, which is a tech that I've been playing in this deck. It comes in kind of handy. I don't summon this all the time. Like, if I end up banishing this, I'll just use this to go into Zeus, because this also has the ability that that if it's going to be destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can detach material from this instead. So basically you can swing with this, and then once you swing with it, you can also just basically detach a material, and then during main phase 2 drop a Zeus on them instead of going for the Super Quantum Mech King. This is an option for you guys as well, but the Zeus basically is here because you can board wipe with it, and you can make it really easy with number 27. So that's the big reason that you actually play this card in this deck. We then play a single copy of Access Code just to give us pops. You don't have to play this. You can play Borreload if you want to. And then playing a single copy of Boral Sword because the Boral Sword helps me OTK. 1 copy of Unicorn to spin stuff. Phoenix to pop spells and traps. Cerberus to pop monsters. 1 copy of Pentastag. Pentastag is one of those cards that I thought about bumping up to 2 because it does give my monsters piercing damage if it points to them, which is really nice, because if they're linked to this card, which just means it points to them, it lets them do piercing damage. So I can point this at one of my Crimson Novas and then do piercing, which is really nice. 1 copy of IP, because the IP helps me go into Unicorn, and then a single copy of Link Rebo, because the Link Rebo is basically just here for the copies of V-Jom, because you can use the V-Jom to be able to go into Link Rebo, and it prevents you from being attacked, which is kind of nice. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to play around with. And like I said, if there's anything in the extra deck that you think is just a little bit too expensive and you want to go a little bit more budget, you can change it out. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, there's nothing like where you're playing, like, I don't know, Crusadias, or like you're playing Virtual World where you have to have it and you have to be playing these certain extra deck cards. Like, you could take this entire extra deck and go, I don't need it, and just play a bunch of random stuff in the extra deck that you just feel like you can throw in there for utility, and you'd probably be okay, because the main deck is where it's at, summoning out your Crimson Nova to be able to OTK. Like, you can even play the Train Engine in here if you have the Train Engine, because sometimes you'll get double Crimson Nova and be able to OTK your opponent. So that's it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.